Hi, I'm Jessica Paxton, afternoon host on The Current. Sierra Ferrell just swung by the studios. She's on tour in support of her new album, Trail of Flowers. We had a fantastic conversation, and I'm really excited for you to hear it.
Hello, I'm Sierra Ferrell, and The Current depends on viewers like you to help support this service. Your financial contribution is critical that makes these in-studio sessions possible. Take the next step right now and become a member and head over to thecurrent.org to start your membership today. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.
Hi, I'm Jessica Paxton, afternoon host here at The Current, and I am joined today by alt country sensation Sierra Ferrell, who is here ahead of a performance tonight at First Avenue and in support of her fantastic new album, Trail of Flowers. Sierra, welcome to The Current.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have had an amazing year. You won the Emerging Artist Award at the Americana Music Awards. You made your Grand Ole Opry debut. You've released this critically acclaimed new album. Rolling Stone magazine has called you one of the most fascinating and fast-rising stars in roots and country music today. And now you're headlining a major national tour, many of which dates are sold out, including here in the Twin Cities. First of all, congratulations. Second of all, does it feel a tad surreal?
Yeah, just hearing you go down the list of all those things, sometimes we forget to be grateful and thankful for how things are going for us, especially like with the world the way that it is. It's easy to get wrapped up and forget your accomplishments because it's a lot to carry around,
Well, you have had incredible success, but at the same time, I do think you are very grounded and you do have a fascinating story and amazing trajectory. Talking about being on the road, you have certainly traveled the highways and the byways, and that is in your musical DNA. Originally from West Virginia, now based in Nashville, but along the way, a compelling story that sounds right out of a Hollywood screenplay. Maybe talk about how you got into music, what your original musical inspiration was, when you started making music.
Well, music has just always been something that is just been in me, and it's just something that I knew that it was going to be a passion of mine in life because it just have always brought me so much joy. And also it's just kind of been therapy in a lot of ways. I feel like I get to express myself. I get to release and process a lot of damage that people have done to me throughout my life and continue to do in life. That's just how life is, and that's okay, and it's beautiful, it's chaotic, but that's kind of our job, is to figure out a way to maneuver around it to become better people.
Well, and for people who maybe aren't familiar with your story, so you grew up in West Virginia, hard to make ends meet, left home relatively young, and literally crossed the country, hopping on trains, busking, turning alleys and street corners and sidewalks into your stage, busking to make ends meet. So music, always a passion, always a pursuit. Was it really survival, but also potential career? Or was it just that thing that, like, this is this passion I feel within myself?
In that moment and point in time in my life, I do believe I was looking for something, perhaps maybe even running away from something, maybe even run away from my own traumas, maybe running away from situations that were no longer serving me. And even on the road, I still feel like my ghost found me. And although I will say that I am in a much better situation and position with, like, I no longer partake in drugs. Well, California sober, but but it's just something that I feel like we're all on our own journeys, and we're all going to make it to the top eventually. And it's just finding that route to get there. And success is so different in everyone's mind, and like what it means to you or like what it means to me. And that's like something too, like I try to focus on and talk about more of is, especially like with American dreaming. I like to talk about like what is the American dream to you, like what brings you joy, what is something that can be sustainable in being a good person, being a better person, and also like being a solution to how society's being ran.
I'm so glad you mentioned American Dreaming. There is a lot of joy and positivity in your spirit and in your music, but you're also not afraid to hit on the heavy truths. And I wouldn't say perhaps that your songs are politically bent, but there's definitely a message there, and you're not afraid to point out the flaws in the world and maybe the scary stuff in the world, but approaching it in a way that is not pretending it doesn't exist, but also, like you said, working through it, surviving it, coming out on the other side, and then saying, hey, I have this resilience, I have this reflection, I have this ability to be reborn, using what you learned from that to rise above on the other side, which is incredible and honestly for a lot of people really hard to do.
Yeah, and it is pretty wild because everyone's internal clocks just work differently. And, we got people that need people. Honestly, in general, we all need people at the end of the day. And it's finding that connection with people and finding the best place to where your light can shine the brightest and finding the right people to surround yourself with. And, that's like a large portion of how we become people is our surroundings. Of course, we have to do our own work to figure out how to negotiate that as well. And energy is very real. And, like our hearts talk to each other before we do. And so that's how that vibe and energy becomes a thing where people are like, oh, I just get a bad energy or a bad vibe from that person. It's because our hearts already talked before we did. And sometimes it tells us things that we don't want to know or like wish we didn't know.
You seem to have this amazing connection with the spiritual and the natural world and this like intuitive sense of communication. You were talking about how you will get goosebumps performing, but then your audience getting goosebumps, and that I just got goosebumps now just looking at you talking like this. But that sense of like physical connection that you have not only in your music, but in performance. And like you said, like you have to feel these vibrations here in order for you to feel them there. Is that a big part of your songwriting process? I mean, you mentioned ghosts before.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you believe in ghosts?
I definitely believe in supernatural experiences in life. It's very dumb and naive for humans to think that we know it all.
I was going to say it's dumb and naive not to think it doesn't. yeah, absolutely.
It's also just so obvious that history has been altered and changed, and a lot of secrets are being kept from us, like consistently, constantly, every day. I mean, it's a known fact. And I think as a species, like we have so much more growth to do amongst the peons, the people, the working class, the people like us who are just like out here trying to keep the systems in place, perhaps because that's just how they are here. It's like, it's not our fault, the playground we're born into. It's just like, it's like acknowledging the evil, finding a way to negotiate around it, finding a way and a place to be a light to help maybe perhaps be a guide for other people. And it's just like, you can't beat someone to wake up. Like they have to wake up on their own. You can it's like, like leading a horse to water. You can't make it drink. It's just kind of like maybe just perhaps be that beacon of light to help start a more positive solution instead of wallowing in sinful actions, which is so easy to do, like drinking and like lying, cheating, being not as good of a friend as you should be.
I should be jotting all this down.
Yeah, I mean,
helpful hints.
A lot of times I say this stuff out loud too, because like not only other people need to hear it, but I need to hear it myself. I think it's huge for people to take accountability of their actions and rise above and just like, like society just does make it so difficult. And, like we're eating poison consistently, constantly. We're being showered in poison. There's just so much underlining going on. And it's like our view on life, on what is shown to us is so surface level.
No, I'm so moved by your words and your insight and again that reflection. I think it's something else that you touched upon, which I think is really compelling about your music, is that look at you. You're like super cool and hip and fresh and new, but you embrace the past. You embrace songs from 100 years ago and paying tribute to old-timey music and Appalachian traditions. When I first started listening to you, I was immediately struck by sort of that high lonesome element. Certainly you hear that in Fox Hunt with the fiddle reel at the beginning of the song. But in talking about how society tends to we tell the same stories generation after generation. We make the same mistakes generation after generation. Even a song like American Dreaming, I think, is so universal because whether you're in your 20s or in your 70s, you can relate to the message of the song and feeling kind of downtrodden, but wanting to be hopeful, wanting to rise above, wanting to focus on the positive, wanting to focus on friends and family and bettering yourself. And so I think what makes your music, or one of the things that makes it so compelling, is that it does pay homage to the past while really looking forward. And is that like an intentional thing for you?
Well, that falls in line with the traveler community. I started traveling a lot more, and it's kind of funny how all these people who kind of live in this lifestyle, of course, there's always layers. There's layers to everything. But there's like a lot of people, it's like they are living that sort of way because they know the systems in place are wrong. So they kind of are like leaning more into being a free human being to actually experience life how we probably could be living it. That's like something that's, I feel like, is so raw. And it's like, it's almost like some of these people are stuck like in another life, like where things were better and different. And it's like they, not only do they live that sort of way, but they like, their music is that sort of way. And it's just like, it's almost like maybe even perhaps a frequency thing. Cause like we all like kind of allude, like we attract a lot of things, even like things that we don't want because we're thinking about it, you know? And it's like, and it might not come for months, years later, depending on how much energy you're putting into that. I may seem like I come off like a very strong person, which at times I can be, but life is scary. And honestly, sometimes if it was up to me, I would just be home laying in bed or like with my garden. And like, because people hurt me so much. And it's just, it could be heavy. And I know people hurt people all the time. And that's just what people have to go through. And it's like we have to just keep being strong and moving forward and just like do the best we can. And just I like doing interviews and talking about this stuff because people don't talk about it enough. People don't talk about things that we really need to hear instead of talking about what they want to hear.
So true. I read something that you referred to yourself as the most introverted extrovert, and I totally related. I was like, I'm the most extroverted introvert. So I completely get that. And being excited about the things that you're passionate about, but also feeling sometimes like, I just need to crawl under the covers and just escape. Do you feel though sometimes you get this added pressure having like country music say she's the next big thing or she's saving country music? Are you able to separate the pressures of being who you are from the passion as an artist?
I definitely do feel pressure sometimes because I'm a yes gal, so
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, we forget that our body has limits, our spirit has limits, our emotions have limits, and it's like we can only take so much. And it's like we spend the first half of our life getting all this trauma, and then we spend the second half of our life trying to fix it. So it's just like also trying to heal yourself, but also trying to be this positive force in such a dark world, So, I mean, it could be heavy, but it's all worth it in a lot of ways. And, sometimes I even just being able to connect and help so many people, even though I know I still have a lot of work to do myself, it like keeps me alive. It keeps me going.
Seriously profound. I wish I could come up with better words. So much of what you say and talk about, it's funny how things that are so simple at the same time are so profound. And it's ironic that we as human creatures sometimes are unable to see that. The beauty of just the simple connection and the beauty in music. And speaking of beauty, I have to say you are also like a total fashion icon. So not only do you have this great music that really does touch people in so many ways, and but the hair, the makeup. So one thing I was thinking about, I was like, you embrace the glitz and the glam of country, like old time country music, the big hair, the sequins, the fringe, but at the same time being really down to earth and approachable and accessible and insightful. And so how do you mesh those two, like the many facets of your personality?
Well, like I said, we do all have limits, and it's like, it's all like really fun, and that's like one of my favorite parts. Of course, the music's always going to be my heart and my passion, but like the visuals is fun. You know, it gives you something to do and like play with different things. Like my hair is curly today, and I was like, "Whoa, this is interesting and new." And you know, I feel like I've kind of gathered and collected some amazing, talented people that kind of just add their own flair to it, or have great ideas. And you know, I've even found like a handful of wonderful, beautiful seamstresses that have been making me like just wonderful, amazing costumes and outfits. So I've just been really thankful in that sense. And you know, like whenever we're out touring, it's like you have all this time to kill. So it's like, why not just go ahead and like try to look a little more sparkly or something?
It's absolutely fantastic. And I think that's one of the things people really love about your live performances is, you know, the music. And like you said, you have this incredible band and there's so much energy. But you never know what she's going to show up wearing. And again, the glitz and the glam and the flowers. So that's one thing, like the title of the album, Trail of Flowers. Again, that connection with the natural world and with the beauty around us. And you know, a lot of the costumes I've seen you wearing are, you know, embedded with flowers and the idea of shedding flowers as you leave a space. What's your favorite flower? Do you have a favorite flower?
It's funny because a lot of people seem to think that my favorite flower is an orchid because they always get me orchids. My house is a graveyard for orchids.
They're hard to take care of. Don't people understand that?
I'm also just like, I feel like if I was home more, maybe I could have their chances of livelihood could be extended. And maybe if I had a greenhouse, it could be a little better too, because I know that they like a lot of like warmth, and they're very finicky flowers.
Maybe that's the message right there.
That's the message.
You need a lot of extra attention. No, they're beautiful flowers, but I loved the imagery of flowers. So I just love the idea of a trail of flowers. And again, it's an incredible release, critically acclaimed. You have this huge headlining tour that's taking you all across the country. Is the tour going well? Any surprises? Yeah. Any highlights? Anything that has sort of struck you? Like, what is this? How are you loving the Minneapolis or the Twin Cities?
It's been like a build, you know, over time, and I'm really excited seeing the visuals from the outside, from where I don't get to see it from the out front until there's videos and whatnot. So it's been really interesting and fun to see the lights and the smoke and just like the backdrops that, you know, that have been made, and kabuki is what it's called, which I think is also really cool. Also, we're learning the whole new record. We have a whole new record to kind of
12 incredible songs. Yeah.
So it's been, well, and it's funny though too, because it's like we have been playing some of those songs for a little bit, but we've kind of got to like dial it in and hone it in more. So it's been fun in that sense, and it's also just been fun to have more songs. And I'm really excited to dial in more with like the costumes I love wearing, like having different costume changes and just getting the crowd all pumped and excited. And that's not, you know, alcohol induced all the time. And it's like, that's also a funny thing too. You kind of like learn who your friends are, or you like start to lose friends when you don't drink. And you're like, what do I do now? I guess I'll just put on my thumbs, you know?
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about your story is that you do not shy away from talking about addiction and recovery and the challenges that can come with that. You know, most people might think, oh, I'm sober now and my life is fantastic. Well, there's loss that comes with being sober and being honest about that. And again, I think that's something that people are really drawn to you and your music because of that honesty and that transparency. So, you know, I obviously there's an age difference between you and I, but I feel like there's so much wisdom. You're like a deep soul and a wise old soul, and that transcends through your music, which is just really beautiful. So thank you. Well, it has been such a treat to have you here and to hear you perform 3 of the songs from the new album, Trail of Flowers. We wish you the very best with the rest of the tour. And please, please, please come back, because I feel like I could talk to you for hours and hours on end.
I thought we still had like another hour. I was ready. I like talking to you.
Right back at you. So let's do it again. Absolutely. Well, the new album, Trail of Flowers, is out now. You'll also be performing at the Blue Ox Music Festival in Eau Claire, Wisconsin in June, I think June 29th. Sierra Ferrell, thank you so, so very much. And again, Trail of Flowers out now.
Thank you.
The Current is public media made possible thanks to member support.